Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Soul-u-tions podcast. I'm your host, Tara Simkins, and today we're going to talk about a concept that you probably experience in various aspects of your life. Since we're on the cusp of summer, and I imagine many of you will be traveling, you will experience this when you come back home after a great vacation. The term is Reentry Turbulence. Da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm going to leave you hanging there and listen to the introduction, and I'll see you on the other side. Einstein said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." Most everyone in the world is solving their problems the wrong way. Our problems come from our thinking, and we can solve them with our thinking. So, whether you're at your lowest, just trying to grow, or whether you are trying to sustain growth over your lifetime, join us as we push the boundaries of our current thinking and redefine how we find Soul-u-tions.
The hope and the strength and the love and the smiles and the laughter of friends and family. Add it up, you'll find no limit to the possibilities.
Well, I've just returned from an amazing trip of a lifetime. And I was just talking to my producer over here, Ethan, and he's just returned from a trip of a lifetime. And I was reminded of this kind of thing that happens when you have been off and been outside your usual routine of things and your usual exposure, basically to TV and media and all of the technology that we seem to be bombarded with all the time and all the place, especially if you get lucky enough to go on a vacation where you're going to spend a lot of time in nature. And when you return home, you're on this high. And when you return home, sometimes the reality feels like it's kind of crashing and burning you up upon reentry. I was really reminded about this because on this trip, I went to Morocco and it really was fabulous. And every need had been anticipated, surprises galore. It was just such a fabulous trip where I really got away. I was able to think. I thought a lot about y'all and thought a lot about the topics that we discuss here and read more. How can I say things in a new way or a different way or a way that really connects with you and is something meaningful for you in your life? And so enjoying the pleasure to be able to have just time to think without the usual distractions that we have in our life. And we loaded a plane, and as we were getting on that first plane, I received a text message, not like a social media direct message DM. And in it was a message. It was a message from someone who had read one of my posts and watched the reel. And she had a different take on what I laid out in that post and in that reel. And she said she was called to really reach out personally and let me know kind of her thoughts about it. And there was something about the state of vulnerability that I was in at that time. Like, we just had been so open and everything had just been so loving and so great. And I hadn't had an interaction like that in, gosh, it was about 10 days. Everything was about discovering things and new things and getting to know people. And so when I received this, and my first take upon reading it was like, oh, it really almost felt like a stab to my heart. And I know this person. We're not great friends, but I know them and I know that they're a person of faith and I know that they're a kind and compassionate person. And yet, the message kind of just stuck me in the heart. And I realized, I was like, oh, Tara, as I was processing it, I was like, this is reentry. This is the turbulence of reentry. You're just in a different, not only mind space, but you're in a different heart space and a different soul space than you are when you're going about your day-to-day stuff, when you're a little more prepared and maybe even a little more protective of this part of you. You're not as, I'm looking at the camera while I'm talking to you and I'm thinking about the aperture of the lens, right? The lens of my heart isn't, as open on a day to day. And that's not a good or a bad thing. It's just, if, for instance, all this sunlight is coming in, a lens of your camera is going to close so that it can handle the amount of light and adjust to the amount of light that's coming in. Same thing with the pupil of your eyes. So I think like we all go about our day-to-day stuff with the aperture of our heart kind of set on a setting that allows us to interact with people and allows for maybe some pushback or some disagreement or any kind of friction in that regard. And so I was like, oh, Tara, this is that thing. This is the turbulence of reentry. And I wanted to respond or think about how I wanted to respond to this person because I really do believe and know it came from this loving place. And also there was something that I wrote that touched her in a way that she felt invited to reach out and share this thing with me. And so I wanted to give myself some time and space in order to process it and process it from the most generous place that I could come from and see her in the most generous light that I wanted to see her in. And, it's kind of ironic that as I'm experiencing this, I'm actually in an airplane. And it's being piloted by a pilot who is very aware of turbulence and very well trained on what to do when turbulence occurs. There's an announcement that the pilot makes to everyone on the plane, and it says, okay, we are getting ready to experience some turbulence. This is usually prior to you hitting the turbulence. They can see it on the radar. They know it's coming. They prepare you. A sturdy pilot, a good pilot wants to prepare the passengers on his plane for the turbulence, wants them to feel safe when they go bump, 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 that there's nothing wrong with the plane and that keep your mind from spiraling down and thinking that your plane is going to spiral down. So, they'll come on and they'll say, ladies and gentlemen, we want you to fasten your seat belts. We want you to go back, return to your seat, and just prepare yourself for some turbulence. We're going to experience some turbulence here. And I think the reason I wanted to talk to you about that is, again, we're at the beginning of the summer. We're going to take some vacations. We're going to take some trips. And I want you to think ahead and plan for some reentry turbulence. And it's going to show up in a couple of different ways. So one is going to be, I would call it the reentry turbulence from the trip of a lifetime that you come back to, the one that I experienced and that Ethan experienced. Another one, though, that I can think of is going to be maybe reentry turbulence as it regards to arriving at vacation with your family of origin. You are going to like arrive at the beach house with your siblings and their children and your parents. You're going to have a multi-generational time for excitement and probably one of everyone's favorite places, or just something everyone's been looking forward to being together. But that involves like the reentry into your family of origin turbulence that you don't necessarily feel in your day to day. If you have, you have your own family now. Your siblings may have their own family now. You don't live under your parents' roof anymore. So even if you aren't married, you may be in an apartment somewhere, and maybe a sibling's married or not married or have kids and doesn't have kids, but now everybody is going to be under the same roof again, and you're not under that roof all the time like you used to be when you lived together. And this has a bit of a reentry turbulence as well, as everybody, readjusts to having certain trigger points that favorite sibling of yours knows how to push the buttons better than anybody else. And so preparing yourself for reentry turbulence is something that you can do to ease the transition and to make sure that you still leave with the just awesome, feel good memories of the experience. And this takes some intentionality because our memories are malleable. That's the way scientists describe our memories. They're malleable, which means that our memories are not an exact recording, that they are not necessarily as reliable as we like to think that they are, and that our memories tend to be attached with strong emotion. And it's more of the strong emotion that elicits a memory than not. So you can see how reentry turbulence could have the result of hijacking like your great feeling that you had, the high that you were riding on after the trip of a lifetime, or all the fun that you were looking forward to, going to the beach with your bigger family, extended family. So if you know this, right, I think it's just important to remember that, oh, yeah, my memory is malleable. And what I know is that this emotion could be really strong. I could be scared by this turbulence, right? I could have the experience of the turbulence, as I said, hijacking or eclipsing what would otherwise be a smooth ride. And we have a negativity bias in our brains, which we talk about on here. But this is another way that the negativity bias stacks on top of the memory being unreliable and being attached to stronger emotions. So if that turbulence catches you off guard, it scares you, it impacts your ability to feel safe, whether it's in the plane, it's in the beach house, or it's in a friendship or a relationship. And so we want you to, because we're all adults here listening to this podcast, and I'm putting my hand over my heart, which is a signature move for me, hand over heart. And this is just to say, hey, I'm safe. It's just a reminder. The turbulence comes up. It's like you taking the role of the sturdy pilot who's coming over the intercom system. It says, there's going to be some turbulence here. Return to your seats, fasten your seatbelt. When you put that hand over your heart, you are assuming the role of the sturdy pilot within yourself. And you have the ability to calm down the rest of yourself. And it's just like, hey, we're hitting some turbulence here. I was not expecting to get that message upon, before my feet landed back in the United States and at home. I thought that I had, just more time riding on this high. Let me just kind of not close my heart off, but let me just recognize like, oh yeah, I loved having my heart so opened during this experience. This was a remarkable experience to have, and it is one I want to take with me and remember for forever. And yet, I know that when I'm walking around back at home, doing all the things, interacting with just the day-to-day friction of life, I'm going to close the aperture of my heart just a little bit so that I can, not be blinded or overwhelmed by all of that additional interaction. And it isn't something that you have to totally protect yourself against all the people in the world, right? I think sometimes our brain wants to go to, well, I mean, that was open, that was special, but there's no way I can interact in the world like that anymore. And what I want to challenge you is to say, something else happened on that trip of a lifetime, and something else happened when you are able to have these type of experiences that open you. They deepen you in a way that we want you to bring that deepened version of you back into your everyday life, because there's something special about that deepened version of you. And it just gets me chills thinking about this, like encouraging you to return as a changed person, like be the changed person that you are from the experience that you had. And know that you're going to need to close that aperture up a little bit, not board it off, right? Not armor it up, but just kind of close it up a little bit so that you can interact as this deepened version of you in the world and touch people in the way that you were meant to without overwhelming yourself by the turbulence, throwing up, or scaring yourself half to death and totally forgetting about that deepened version of you. Similarly, we're going to get talking about the beach trip now with your extended family. Since you moved out from under your parents' roof, you have grown. You've had exposure to other thoughts and ideas, but you are a different person than you were when you left and when you all lived together under the same roof. And here's a shocker. So is everyone else who's coming back. And depending upon the year and depending upon the season of life, some people are going to be maybe a little harder and harsher because of their most recent experiences and struggles in life. And some people are going to be a little lighter, a little easier. And so really preparing yourself, I think this is something we just don't talk about enough. Like preparing yourself to be the person who enters that, beach house with extended family as the person who knows within themselves that you have grown up, that you have, matured, that you have learned and experienced some things that the rest of your family is not going to know you as yet. And so if you can hold the space to get known, like if this is an opportunity for you to allow them to know you, as you are now, and for you to get to know them as they are now. And that's going to require you being able to hold the space or have a capacity for some awkwardness, some run-ins, as we might call it, in our family with each other. But instead of shutting down immediately and saying, this isn't worth it, and going back to some maybe older patterns, if you could dare to say, okay, they may not be ready for this big full me yet. I might just close that aperture a little bit, but I am going to hold the space and also know that it's okay to not be seen as the person that I know I am right now. It's okay to give them time to kind of catch up and to get to know the new me. And likewise, it's okay for me to give them time to show me who they are and to explain to me things that, hey, when you tell that story about me, it really is old. Could we retire that story? I'm finding myself feeling really vulnerable about you telling that story. And I know it's true, but there's something about me thinking back upon that version of me who did it. And it's just hard. It's hard for me to hear now, or it's hard for when you tell all the cousins about it now. And if you can open up, be the first to lead a conversation like that, right? You are again acting like the sturdy pilot coming over the intercom with your family, not taking over things, but you're just like, hey, this is rough for me. It's just rough. And if you can think of it again as simply turbulence, not something that's the end of the world that's happening, or you're so misunderstood by your family, or I knew we should never have come, or all of those things. Like those are thought spirals that are spiraling you out of your own presence and your ability to hold yourself and to hold the space for the good memories that you are sure to make on the family vacation to rise up within you. So I would love for you to take this concept of reentry turbulence and think about how you might apply it in your life. In addition to these two ways of on vacation, trip of a lifetime type things, or family vacation, the first time, I'll give you two other examples and then you think of yours. I remember when my son Brennan was in treatment, and we would go inpatient in the hospital for 30 days, and then we would come home for 5. And we were so elated to get out of the hospital. I mean, 5 people spending the night in a hospital every weekend, and, one parent, and going back and forth, and to be up under the same roof again in our own home with our own kitchen, our own pillows, sheets, TVs, sofas, just like the dog, all of the things. But inevitably, there was a breakdown. Inevitably, there was a breakdown. And we started calling this actually reentry, that we would, that idea of burning up on reentry, not just turbulence, but a spaceship coming back down through the Earth's gravitational pull. You're like, we're burning up on reentry. So that's another area where it happened. And this could happen with, hey, I had 2 college kids who just came home from the summer. I am sure they feel like they're burning up on reentry back into my home with my rules, or with what their dad and I, how we spend the evenings watching TV, or, whatever the thing is that you may feel like this is a reentry point. And another place I just did this, recorded a, a, um, a lesson today for something that's going to come up in June, and I'll share all of it with you. But it's called the Marriage Mastery Summit, and they were using the woman who's leading the summit was using this idea of reentry turbulence in relationship to her husband's hobby, and how like he may come home from a high from fishing, right, or a high from playing golf, and come into a room that's chaotic or a home that's chaotic. And I was thinking that made me also think about my trip, because I'm an empty nester. I don't have kids I'm returning to, but two of, the women that I was traveling with, they were returning home to littles. And so they were anticipating a reentry on that regard. And so similarly, the ability to plan and prepare for the reentry part of the potential for turbulence. This is not borrowing trouble from tomorrow. This is not being negative. What this is being is saying like, oh, just like the pilot, these are one of the potential issues that we could come up against in a flight. And my bigger job is to make sure that I keep my passengers safe, and that I'm flying the plane safely, and that if I can prepare the passengers for turbulence, then I'm going to decrease their sense of concern and their potential to get excited and create more danger. And so I want you to think about reentry turbulence in this regard. Like, it's another thing just to put on your mental checklist when you are doing your vacation list or your return from school list, or, even in your marriage relationship or any relationship you have. A friendship is to think about like, oh yeah, they may be coming off of a high of something and I might be at a low spot. But if I can, instead of just vomiting to them all the awful things that happened during my day, perhaps I can see that high as a point of connection with them, and I could share in that with them. And then what would I need to do in order to feel at ease enough, or my cup to be filled enough to do that? Like, oh, maybe, if my husband plays golf on Saturdays, then maybe on Friday nights I could say, hey, Saturday's going to take its toll on me, and I want to make sure that my cup is full enough. Could you always do dinner on Friday nights and breakfast on Saturday mornings before you take the day off? That way I'll be ready to take over. And I just think, like anything else, again, I want you to have this image of the sturdy pilot. The sturdy pilot is basically you're communicating to your partner in that situation, hey, we might have some turbulence upon your reentry from your amazing, golf match today with your buddies, the best weather, 3 birdies and an eagle, whatever, the best round of your life. And you might need to fasten your seatbelt. But if you can help me handle the turbulence I'm going to probably experience in my day by doing these things for me beforehand, then, it'll be a smoother reentry for you as well. So it's just a way of being that person who is the leader in the family, who really feels called to take on that role in your family dynamic, whether it's your marriage, your parenting, your work with your siblings or your parents, or, your greater friend circles and work circles. Like, I really want you to always feel prepared. If you, as a listener of this podcast, like, you are that person. You are that person who is willing to go first, who's willing to take the leadership role in your life to be a shining light of, as much of God's love as can come through you. And in order to do that, right, we're going to just kill this metaphor, to land the plane. In order to just land the plane of that, you just need to know and be prepared for certain things that could go wrong and what your response will be to them ahead of time. And I promise you, it will go such a long way. And people will experience you as that sturdy leader of the family, the sturdy pilot in the family, the safe place in the family. And you will be modeling to everyone in your family another way to be in the world. So, Reentry Turbulence, words of the day. Talk about it with someone. I do think that when you listen, you get a new idea on this podcast. Share it with someone. I was listening to this podcast. She's talking about this idea, Reentry Turbulence. It's so cool. What do you think about it? And what are your tips and tricks for reducing turbulence on reentry? And it just is something cool to bond over conversation other than, complaining or woe is the world and all of that kind of stuff. It's a way to say, hey, we are in this together, and here's a fun new idea, and let's share it together. So remember, share this podcast with a friend and just type in, what do you think about this topic on reentry turbulence? And I would really, really, really appreciate it if you would leave me a great review if you like this. This helps the algorithm on the various platforms recommend this podcast to other people. And so it would mean the world to me if you did that. It's just my great pleasure to record these and think of ideas for you. And so if you could do that for me, it would be wonderful. I hope you have a great summer filled with wonderful memories and wonderful trips of a lifetime, even if they're to your corner cul-de-sac on a bicycle with your kids. A trip of a lifetime can be anything you want it to be. And I hope that you have many of them over the course of the summer. Okay. And I look forward to coming back and recording many podcasts for you to listen to over the rest of the summer. Thanks for listening.
And I ain't done loving the ones who cared for me. The hope and the strength and the love and the smiles and the laughter of friends and family. Add it up, you'll find no limit to the possibilities. The left and the right and some faith in the fight, and you're